The cost of intelligence is dropping to zero, but that doesn't mean the work gets easier. It just gets messier. More agents, more tools, more moving parts. This podcast is for the people in the middle of it. Those wiring this into real work, testing it under pressure, and making it all stick. In each episode, I chat with people to figure out what's working right now and how to apply it. Welcome to Bots at Work, presented by Fringe Legal. Let's get into it. Well, Mike, welcome to the pod. So glad to have you here. And I'm excited for the conversation today.
Stoked to be here, Ab. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, so we met randomly only a few weeks ago, of all places, at a Anthropic meetup here in Orange County. And I was excited to meet another lawyer there for what seemed, and I think for most people would have assumed it to be, a very tech-focused event. And you were up there giving a demo. So you have a really cool story where you basically beat out something like 500 engineers at a hackathon recently, which kickstarted your software development and your company formation journey before you were a practicing lawyer. So do you mind just giving us a bit of your origin story, where it all started?
Yeah, so I was a lawyer, still am a lawyer, got a little bored, running my own personal injury firm, started getting really good at prompting. And then with my cousin, we might be able to go into that, but he's a serial entrepreneur. He convinced me to try to, connect my prompts into something we could sell to other law firms. Then through that, we hired a professional coder and he did a great job with it. But then we needed to make some changes and we were basically out of money and not making money, like most startups. And then it became a necessity thing of, okay, what can we do? And that was right when Cursor was like just coming to the fold. These AI tools were getting good enough where you could just kind of tell it what you need and then either copy paste or Cursor would just do it for you. And it was kind of crazy. And then, so I learned coding that way. I still to this day do not read code. Now I tell Claude. And then I ended up at this, I applied for this hackathon. There was 13,000 people that applied for the Anthropic Claude Opus 4.6 builds hackathon. And I didn't think much of it because I was just like, all right, yeah, I'll apply, but I'm not getting in. And then next thing I know, I get in. And then next thing I know, I end up winning the thing. And came with $50,000 for Anthropic credits, which has been really helpful. And it's been a life changer. It was kind of like the way my mom explains it, it's like I won the American Idol of coding.
That's super cool, actually, and I didn't know some of that. So it sounds like we'll rewind a little bit, and for a lot of the viewers, listeners, Cursor is this place where you can code. It's usually for developers. It's called an IDE, integrated development environment, and you write code in there. It's what traditional coding is, but you can access all of these other different models. I also use it. Um, it seems daunting, because it's, if you're not a developer, if you're a lawyer, you are going into the weeds a little bit. And I wrote a post about how it's become so normalized for so many knowledge workers to now start their day and continue their day from the terminal. I don't think this would have been a thing even a year ago, where for most people, asking them, hey, can you do this in your terminal? They wouldn't know what the terminal was, let alone, have it open and have lots of instances open day in, day out. But that's the beauty of Claude Code, I guess. But it seems like you've been down this path of sort of exploring and learning large language models and Gen AI based tools. What, other than boredom, because while that's a good motivator, I don't believe that's the whole story. What was the big driver for you? What actually got you started in the first place? Do you think you've been quite a entrepreneurial or exploratory or creative person otherwise?
Well, so before law school, I was actually a visual effects artist and a little bit of a reality TV producer. So I've always had this creative itch. And,
Yeah.
and I kind of got burnt out of the Hollywood life. And that's why I went to law school. And I
Right.
actually thought in law school, I was going to go back to entertainment law. And then while I was doing that, I kind of was like, wait, the thing I hate about Hollywood is, is the kissing butts. And
Right.
so through that, I just kind of like, was like, all right, I guess I'm not going back there. Got into PI, but I still always had this creative itch I had to go do. And it was kind of incredible, like with the launch of ChatGPT. And then all of a sudden it's just like, there's this side of me, that creative side that I wanted to keep it tempered down because I was making decent money on working for a PI firm. Then I was making that transition to my own, which is you're gonna be pretty broke for a little bit, that 6 to 9 month
Sure.
period, waiting for that first
Yeah.
settlement. And I was just getting through there, and that's when I started realizing I was getting pretty good at the AI stuff.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, because I think there's a lot of people out there, a lot of lawyers out there, and generally knowledge workers who may find themselves in that boat. And certainly there's a lot of stories, including yours, where people might feel, and hopefully they do, they feel encouraged that, yes, I can do it too. But one of the biggest and the most common things that comes up is, I want to do this, but there is a learning curve
Mm.
in anything, right? Even if it is just open up and start prompting, there is a learning curve, there is a comfort curve. How did you find the time? Because there's only X amount of hours in a day.
Yeah.
But how did you sort of put the time aside for that to learn and figure out, okay, I should use Cursor, I should do this? Did you lean on other people? Was it just, just start experimenting on small projects? What was your start?
Well, look, I have a natural curiosity, I would say, that does separate me from a fair amount of lawyers. Um,
Mm,
but it was a necessity aspect
mm,
of, once we started this thing called OnBreeze, which is basically Granola, which is an AI note taker but it was for lawyers, right?
mm.
To be fair to myself, I started it before Granola was a thing. We came out with, but
Yeah,
just to give myself credit, but Granola is amazing. These other AI note takers, they're all great. Mine was
right.
a phone line, but it was kind of out of necessity because it was just, hey, we needed to be able to scale this thing to handle more than 4 or 5
Yeah.
people. And that was the start of it. What I will
Mm,
say for lawyers looking to get started, right? Look, if you dedicate yourself to 1 week of I have Claude, I have ChatGPT or Codex specifically, get yourself into one of these
yeah,
agents. If you sell yourself for 1 week, if something takes me 10 minutes to write this email normally, I'm going to take
yeah,
15 minutes and force the AI to do it. And you just dedicate yourself for that single week. Within a week,
yeah,
you will now be seeing the compounding of the skills. And before you know, you're going to start building like skills.md, capital S.
yeah, right.
That's when it starts paying off because rather than being like explaining the way your style of your email works, it's like you can basically just set up cron jobs where it looks at your emails and then it's like it writes the drafts for you beforehand.
Yeah,
And now you are saving yourself time. You are basically creating value for your clients without having to do
mm,
that necessarily. So I actually truly believe lawyers are well positioned to be great at this
mm,
new era of AI agents. And it's going to require people to have a little curiosity and be willing to go outside their comfort zone.
yeah. No, I completely agree with you, and I do think that that 1 week, I think even a weekend, just put aside 1 weekend. I know it's hard. I know there's always things to do, but the return on investment is
Yeah.
just immense. It's unreal, and it doesn't take long. That's the thing, especially for most people. When I talk to them, I show them one small thing. At this point, I've not opened Claude, I've not opened Cursor, I've not even opened Cowork. It's just in the standard application, and I think even in there, people just are not using anything, right? Anything more than just using it as a research tool. So
Mm.
just go that 1% beyond, try a deep research to understand and go really deep. And you get, like a BCG, Bain, or, a McKinsey level researcher at your fingertips. Oh my God, what? And you can just, you don't have to do much. You just ask it a couple of questions, you're away. And 30 minutes later, it's looked through hundreds of sources for you and presented you something that's outstanding. I think people will start to see a return on that. The other
I
thing, which
see,
I will
real
just
quick
quote.
to
Yeah,
go with
yeah,
that
yeah,
app.
go. Yeah,
It's kind of like, okay, so a year ago the models were what they were, right? It's not a linear curve right here, it's exponential how much better they
yes.
are. But the problem is a lot of people are just interacting with it within ChatGPT, which is essentially just Google on steroids, the way I look at it, right? It's just search with a little bit
Mm,
more fun to it. What you really need to do is try to get it to do something for you. Create a
yes.
PowerPoint, create a
Yeah.
visual. One of my favorite ones to tell people, lawyers don't love this one, but I tell them just create a video game this weekend. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so if you started doing this a year ago and you asked to do a video game,
Yeah.
it's kind of fun because you had to problem solve, think through it, and it was steps and it would take a couple hours,
Yeah.
but it was fun. Right now, these new models today, Opus 4.7 came out.
Oh,
You can literally be
yeah.
like, create asteroids, that video game, but like make me put me in a first person shooter form, and
Right.
it will do that. 15 minutes
Yeah.
later, like you don't even have to think much about it, but it's really fun to have it do things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. And I think having fun whilst doing some of these things, especially during the learning phase, it's important because I think, and we'll talk a lot about this, to be realistic, the more complex that your task becomes, the more you do have to think, right? And
Mhm.
the less of an expectation you should have, understandably, that, hey, this is going to take me 5 minutes, right? If you're there trying to say, I want to, we're recording this on Riverside, I want to create a Riverside alternative. This is not a 5-10 minute thing. There's a lot that goes into that. Um, but there are so many other things where you can get, outsized return. So
Well,
yeah,
going with
and
that,
well,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
the complex tasks, right?
mm,
People are thinking, they think of it as like, oh, the AI is just not good enough because they expect
yeah,
the AI to do everything. And what you got to realize,
yeah,
this is an incredibly smart partner that you're gonna be working with
yes,
that is like you got to guide it on. And it takes skills that are learned every
mhm,
day by using it.
yeah,
So if you were to gonna go build a Riverside like this, there's actually a lot of components that if you just tell it to go do Riverside, it could
mhm,
kind of do some stuff, but it's gonna miss like the
yeah,
client side uploading. It's gonna miss the
yeah,
compression stuff because those are things that you need to understand yourself. And if you
yes,
ask it to do it, then at that point it
yeah.
will. But those are skills you built up over time and multi-step processing. But that's actually where I think lawyers who every
I agree.
day,
They're so good at deconstructing things and breaking it down into their sort of atomic levels. I agree with you. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday and I told them same thing to you. I'm not a developer, but I've been vibe coding before it was called vibe coding for a
yeah.
long time. But I think my superpower in this world has become I am so good at reading documentation, both technical and otherwise,
Mhm.
right? And to be able to create a PRD, to be able to create a spec, to be able to cleanly plan out what do I want to happen. In fact, sometimes I have to stop myself because I want to give the language model the creative control and not tell it exactly what I want. I want there to be a chance of randomness. But I think lawyers naturally, because you spend so much time learning how to do this, right? You get so good at this and you can go through and when I'm reviewing API documentation, I can tell you I don't understand any of the code, but I absolutely understand the English and I'm able to understand the capability. And it's just putting the puzzle together.
Yeah, and going with that, man, what's
Yeah.
so funny to me about that is some developer was when I was explaining I read API documentation, he was like, "Oh, it's so boring. How do you do that?" I'm like, well, it's actually it's more interesting than what we read for 3 years at law school. Like as lawyers, we already understand how to go find the fun in some of the most driest legal documents in the world. So, and that's what API documentation, all that. But we know how to go into realms that we don't understand and go find the relevant information really well because we've all been trained that way. And that's kind of this vibe coding, right? So it's not math. It's, it's
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay, great. So, yeah, I think for anyone listening, if you're not already itching to go and do something, learn something, go create something today, I promise you, you're going to have a lot of fun doing it. There's lots of places, and you can hit either one of us up on LinkedIn. We'll include our details in the show notes, and we're happy to guide you in different ways. Um, okay, let's go back to your story. So, let's talk to me about the hackathon. So, you applied for it, the 4.6 build hackathon on a whim. Of course, we know what happens at the end, but what was the idea and where did that come from?
yeah.
And how did you develop that as part of the hackathon?
Yeah, so what got me on this one, what was funny is the idea I applied for, I had already come up with the name, so it's actually called Crossbeam, and it's basically California permit system is a nightmare. Any builder or even on the city side, or if you're a homeowner or anything like that, you've been through it, you understand it's like the permit gets submitted to the city. They have a queue because they are backlogged with it. Almost any given city in California, it takes a long time for them to get back to you, and then you're gonna have things that the builder missed, right, on this blueprint. So then the builder then has to go do it, and then it creates this whole cycle of 2 to 3 correction cycles, and that's a good day, right? So where I came across this idea of how can we use AI, specifically Claude Code, to help with this is I was building a demand letter generator like everyone else in legal tech. I built it in November and I did it in a way so that it was cheaper than everything else out there. And it's pretty dang good in my own book. Anyways, besides the point, I'm not trying to sell that. But so that demand letter software, I tested it with zip files that contained up to 1,500 legal docs and medical
Mm,
imagery, all different types of files inside of a single zip file. And then so when my buddy, and he was telling
mm.
me he's a builder of ADUs. His name's Cameron, ADU West Coast. They're excellent if you want an ADU, great value.
Shout out to Cameron. Yeah.
Shout out Cameron. And he was telling me about this permit process. And I was like, there's no way like AI can fix this. Now, so he passed me one of his blueprints. I sent it through Claude code and it actually aired out Claude code. And this was in
Mm,
November. And that kind of really fascinated me because basically to this point, the 97% of things I had thrown at it, it could handle. And
mm,
so and then I dove into it a little bit more and it found out like, okay, so there's not to go too technical, but there was vision requirements within the API that would cause it to
mm.
tear out. These blueprints are massive. They're meant to be printed on a piece of paper the size of a table, right? So there's
Right.
stuff like that. Then if you go, not to go too technical again, sorry, you say that
No, we
it's
can. It's fine.
the context limits at the time, especially were 200,000 tokens. Now, as a
Yeah.
lawyer, like that's where I recommend people to start understanding is context engineering, how you handle
Mm,
multi-turn conversations with your AI to manage token context. That's when people
yeah.
say they have hallucination issues and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
like, no, that's because your context ran out in that ChatGPT conversation because they have limits to it. So then the AI gets like an anxiety. So it just kind of makes things up to finish. And the way
Yeah.
you get around that is basically either there's different strategies you can do. And it's basically taking the finishing end product into another kind of conversation window
Mhm.
to continue and fact check and you just kind of keep looping like that. Or you can
Yeah.
use in Claude Code, there's sub agents. Sub
Yeah.
agents are basically mini chat GPT conversations under the hood. And so that's how you can kind of handle context stuff. But anyways, back in November, that fascinated me. It was just an idea that I was like, oh wow, this didn't work, whatever.
Mm,
When the thing came around, it was like it asked the question of what would you like to pitch? And I was like, I don't even think I'm going to get in. I'm like, okay, well, I've been sitting on this idea for a little bit. My
right.
buddy's ADU permit thing. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
we'll give it a shot. So I get in. And when I got in
Mm.
too, it was shocked I got in because I'm up against huge, like people, engineers from NVIDIA and Apple were in this thing. It was
Right, right.
crazy. And then I was also like, shoot, like I'm doing something that I know is actually kind of impossible. But I was like, all right, you know what? It's a week of my life. We'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
And so I came up with combining with my VFX background, I came up with some nifty kind of cheat codes, I guess you could say, to be
Mm,
able to force the images in and break it up into pieces and then be able to have it use the vision. And the big change was that hackathon was for Opus 4.6. That had just came
mhm.
out. And
Yeah.
prior was Opus 4.5. 4.5 would break down. And then 4.6, if you gave it the proper image breakdowns,
Mm,
it actually started working. And I remember seeing
yeah.
that, if the hackathon started on Tuesday, I remember Wednesday night throwing through locally the initial permit thing. And it was like,
Yeah.
wait, this didn't air out. And it
It's
was
not
like,
airing.
it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
that,
Yeah.
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 And so
I
that was
think
really
and
cool.
I think it's so cool though, and yeah, I think again, these are just some things that people should think about because things are moving so quickly. And I can't remember who said that, whether it was Dario or Sam Altman, which for the builders, you should be developing at the edge, at the frontier, where you are getting up against the limitations. I wish the model was smart enough because probably in 1 to 6 months, the model will get smart enough. And I think you and I spoke about some things that I've been building. I've been doing some stuff with voice for sales and B2B sales team. And for the longest time, that was my limitation where I was just like, oh, I can do this, but the voice models just aren't there yet for
Mm.
what I want it to be, at least at the quality I want it to be. And then suddenly an update drops and you're like, whoa, okay, now everything gets there, right? But all of the time that you've spent, what you call cheat code, I call creative problem solving for you. It pays off because you figured out an efficient way to be able to get around the problem, and now because the base intelligence is higher, you can now do all of that so much better, presumably.
One to go with that today being model drop day is
Yeah,
this is my new life as like a developer, I guess you could say. But Opus
there were
4.7
big
came
there
out
were big vision
today.
updates in that, right? Yeah.
Massive, massive. And we won't go into the 1586 in the past to 2564 that came out today. But I mean, look, I put all this work into this thing and I got it to work. And Boris Cherny, the creator of Claude Code, talks about
Mm,
almost exactly what you brought up, which is
mm,
don't build for the models today, build for the models in 6 months.
mhm,
And literally this morning I got to see a payoff because 4.7
yeah,
came out and I've already got a 7% performance boost by just changing the
wow,
model. Now, when we finish up with this podcast, what Claude is actually, well, it's working on it right now.
right,
When I press go on the plan mode right before this podcast, but it's
right,
redoing my vision pipeline to match the newest vision
yeah,
procedure parts. And so I think we're going to get another 7 to 10%. And then,
nice,
but I mean, imagine if you go build
yeah,
something and then in a single day, they're like, you want to be 15 to 20% better? Just,
right,
and
exactly.
I'm
Well,
not
what a
doing much.
no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
no brainer.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 Can we take a quick aside as we're just talking about model drop days? Are you using the have you tried the new ultra plan mode yet, or are
Yes.
you
Yeah.
using this? You are? Okay, what do you
Ultra
think?
Ultraplan's great because it's kind of like an async workflow in the sense because it
Mhm,
works in the cloud.
yeah,
So plan mode it's a great technique to basically prime your agent for something it's about to do. You give it kind of like some
mhm,
ideas, what you're thinking about, and then it goes in, looks through your code base and looks for it. Ultra plan mode does it in the cloud through your GitHub. So the
yeah,
idea there is it should look through more. It does take longer. I love it for future features I'm gonna go build
yes,
out. Now, I was hoping for like to me, I would have been cool if it spent an hour or 2 hours and it went through my
right,
whole code base. It
mm,
still has some holes, but it is better planning in that direction. What
yeah.
do you think of it?
So I used it. So I think it was in Claude Code before 4.7 dropped. So I
Yes.
used it a couple of times last week. So it errored out on me half the time, which
You need to
was
have your
not good.
environment set up on
Fist,
GitHub.
I did have my environment set up
Oh,
on
you did?
GitHub,
Okay.
but
Sorry.
I did. Which is why it was surprising and frustrating that errored out half the time.
Okay.
So, but I think the plan it created was good. It was actually a much better plan. And the advantage were, again, like we are being technical, but I think the advantage is you have a better starting point, which also means that it's more token efficient. And when you start having, your limits, both from a context point of view and also your usage limits, or you're paying for API credits or cost, you have to think about those things. But the plan it created was significantly better. And because in Cursor, I use plan mode almost every single time I'm doing a feature development or anything big, just because I want to read, again, lawyer in me, I want to read the plan for how are you approaching that? Because sometimes, again, I don't understand the code and all the random things that it puts in there that we're going to set up this or that. I'm not really interested in that, but I'm more interested in the approach because sometimes you can identify, actually, no, you misunderstood what I was saying, probably because I wasn't clear enough, or it just misunderstood. And you can correct it then rather than wait for 2 hours whilst it's doing something. So overall, I'm excited for it. I'm hoping I haven't tried it since launch today. I've got a bunch of projects just sitting. I'll be working on this evening, but yeah,
You'll knock them out,
I'm
man.
looking forward to it. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
But to go with that too, man, I
Mm,
fully agree, right? To me, I've been explaining it like I don't remember the exact Abe Lincoln quote, but if
yeah.
you I think he said if you give him an hour to cut down a tree, he'll spend
Yes.
50 minutes sharpening his axe.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with these AIs, right? You need to plan it out like very deeply because it can get any plan done really quickly. But the problem
Yes.
is in a week, 2 weeks, a month from now, I'm 8 weeks into building Crossbeam out since the hackathon,
Mm,
right? The things I cut corners on earlier, like some days it comes and bites me in the butt.
yeah.
And so it's better to spend the time up front and cheaper
Yeah.
ultimately to spend a lot of time planning. I think that's also where lawyers are really good because it gives you that plan. Now, one thing I
Mm,
want to, like a technique I recommend to a lot of people, you take that plan, you bring it over to another model, and then ask
mhm.
that other model, like,
Yes.
give me the broad strokes of what this would produce. I call that
Yeah.
adversarial prompting. And
Yeah.
because it gives you it like you have this plan in your head that you want it to go do this feature or like a whole
Mm,
program or whatever. And if you go to another model and it tells you, it will tell you what it thinks it's about to create. And if you see, it will basically describe like, here's your holes. It won't say, here's your holes here. You'll just see,
right.
oh, no, that's not what I meant right there or whatever. And then you take
Yeah.
that info back to the original planner. You just keep working on it and you loop back and forth
Yeah.
between the two agents. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's planning mode is so important. And it's, yeah, that's when people think they're just going to go to their AI and be like, hey,
Yeah.
make research report, go.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
nope.
exactly. But I think it is, overall, I feel like generally the analogy is that it's like working with a very good executive assistant that you've just hired, right?
Mhm.
That person has a lot of raw skills, but they just don't understand what you want yet, how your company works, how you like to work, all your SOPs and everything else. And as you start working on a project and as you start working with, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever the model of choice is, which I think for both of us is probably all of them in some capacity or other, um, you start feeding it that information, right? You have your skills.md files. You also have your project brief. You have everything else, and then you have this is what I want. But you have to give it that context to be able to expect the result that you would expect from someone more. And I mean, if nothing else, imagine you have access to probably quite a senior engineer at you know, for free or for $20 a month. It's wild. It's
It's
absolutely
as I
wild.
said. And do you use voice mode?
Ah, of course. Yeah. But okay, so well let's talk about that a little bit.
Yep.
Talk so we both use a software called Wisprflow,
Yep.
um, right? I think at the Anthropic meetup, it seemed like probably something like 80% of the people there use Wisprflow. So shout out Wisprflow. Feel free to reach out if you like to sponsor um,
Yeah.
or give
Please.
us free credits. Exactly. So I use Wisprflow for most things, certainly when I'm on my desktop. But do you mean that, or do you mean voice mode that's built into Claude Code, or
I
actually talking to Claude
I
or
use
ChatGPT?
Wisprflow all day, every
Okay,
day.
yeah,
So they give out an email saying what place you are in your cohort, and so I've always
yes,
been second place in that email. And during the
I need to
hackathon, I
look
actually
now.
met the guy that was first
Yeah,
place.
cool.
I was looking at it a couple days ago, and I was 2.3 million words dictated.
Wow. Okay, I'm not there. Okay, I'm not
But
there,
so
but
I
yeah,
use
that's
it. It
impressive.
helps me think. I'm like
Yes.
verbal, and it really I think through things. I use it all the time. But so in general, I don't when I'm recommending to people just getting into it, you don't need to go straight to Wisprflow. Every
Yes.
model provider, ChatGPT has one, Anthropic
Yeah.
has one. Start there. Start to learn how to use it, but
Mm,
it is the ultimate cheat code when you're working with these LLMs because and it goes back to what you're talking about with the context thing. You know, it is someone will figure out the memory thing to know who you are,
mm,
but each time you
yeah.
chart up a new chat, you need
Yeah.
to kind of give it that context of like who you
Yes.
are, what we're doing here and why. And the why is the
Hmm.
most important part to me, that intent. Like when you get that, when you make sure that it understands why you're doing something and why you're doing it in a certain way, it becomes such better output. Um,
Mm,
so that's why, like, I go into the law school method of IRAC.
yeah.
I use just literally Wisprflow and I talk for 5 minutes straight. And it's just, I lay out the issue. I give it the rules. Here's where the files are.
Yeah.
Pay attention to this, the docs, whatever. And then that analysis section that I just think of as a brain dump. I'm just going to talk for 3 to 4
Mm,
minutes sometimes. And then
yeah.
conclusion is the very end. The science is showing that it pays most attention to the front or the first couple lines and then the last couple lines. And you just remind it,
Yes.
hey, man, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Follow the rules, do it, go,
Yeah.
and then you
No,
press enter.
I agree. And I think, again, a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, generally you had to be focused on prompt engineering. You had to think about, act like this, do this. You're thinking a lot. The models are super intelligent now. And now it's just a matter of just talk to it. Your stream of consciousness is fine. The
Yep.
model will figure out what you want as long as you're at least specific about I want to do this, right? I think they do a pretty good job.
Well, and because especially because if you adopt this like very strict planning kind of
Yes.
architecture, you're that stream of conscious prompting that you're doing is
Mm,
leading to a plan, and that plan ultimately is the prompt engineering that
yes.
people like became so obsessed with. But
Yeah.
it's just a lot easier and faster to do it. Now I
Yeah.
pay attention to context engineering matters a lot nowadays.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
a whole other
Yeah.
beast, but I call it look up
That's a whole other
Ripper.
beast. Yeah, I think we've sort of touched on enough technical topics for today though. So, okay, let's go back to a couple more things that'll be relevant to this audience, which is, you're working with large documents. That's very relevant. In your case, you're dealing with images. It seems like
Mm,
both your creative problem solving and model improvements is helping there. How are you thinking about? I mean, you're a lawyer. You're still working with, well, I guess like city councils and governments and stuff.
mm.
So the confidentiality, dealing and handling sensitive information, there's PII in there, and all this other stuff. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, the PII just had to go through this with an insurance company.
Mm,
Luckily, it's a lot less PII than what we deal with as lawyers, so it actually felt
sure.
a little bit easier. Now, okay, if you're gonna go out there and vibe code an app, yes, in general, you should learn some security stuff. You should read up on SOC 2.
Mm,
It's really not that complicated when it comes to that. But on the business side of things, yes, I'm dealing with cities. And so I got a pilot program with Buena Park.
mm,
I'm very excited about. And then
yeah,
some other cities I'm talking to. And so, and that's kind of where the understanding the law, being able to look up laws yourself. I
yeah,
mean, it's such like an advantage on that end of things. So it's been great. Like, so it's not
yeah,
smooth sailing, but it is
yeah.
like, it's a big
It
advantage
makes a
for me to be able
difference.
to
Yeah,
understand this, the legal
yeah.
side of things. Um,
Amazing. Yeah. And then I guess last question, and we'll go into the quick fire round and start sort of wrapping up. Um, you've done a lot of other things. So I think you've been able to just stack your skills over time to get to that place. I think a lot of attorneys and a lot of people in general, running a business, it's not the same thing as running a practice. It's not
mm.
that dissimilar, but certainly running a SaaS company, you're thinking about very different things to running a practice. Talk to me about that transition. How was that for you?
Yeah, well, granted, so both I'm running by myself at the moment, and then
Mm,
I am, I know for Crossbeam, I know we'll need to go hire people, but it is
right.
a truly interesting time period because of how much work that these agents can do. So I'm kind of
Mm,
just pushing myself to see how far I can take it with
yeah.
just Claude, my open claw. My open
Yeah.
claw's name is Laird. Yeah, he handles a lot of my
Yeah.
admin work for me. So it's truly like a new age. And then I've been reading up a little bit more about company formations, those types of things.
Yeah.
Jack from the former founder of Twitter, who runs
Mm,
Blocks
yep.
nowadays, which is Cash App and those things. He wrote a really interesting concept of like this new age of if the AI has full visibility into your meetings are on transcripts, your interactions in your company are on
Yeah.
Slack. Every employee they're working with an AI, so you also have those traces.
Mm,
The concept of like essentially you kind of get rid of middle management because middle management exists in a way you know, to kind of just coordinate people. So then it's like,
yeah.
all right, because they're already, I wake up every morning and my Claude bot basically gives me my to-do list based
Right.
upon my emails and my GitHub, which is where my coding
Mm,
lives. And it just goes through and it's like, all right, yeah, here's what's on the docket today and
yeah.
calendar, obviously. And that's kind of
Mm,
like I've been operating this way for about 3 months now, and it's
mm,
it's a lot better than the
yeah.
way I used to do it.
Yeah. Do you think you lose a sense of agency, just to go to into a slightly deeper question, because now your day is being planned for you? How much, I don't want to say flexibility, because of course in this world you still have control
Mm.
for now. Yeah, do you think you'd lose that sort of sense of agency and that sort of spontaneity in your day?
Due to the AIs kind of control my day, or
Yeah, yeah.
no, actually, it prioritize it allows me to do what I do best, which is,
Mm,
I've always struggled with paperwork, repetitive tasks, things that kind of, bore me. I've always kind of,
mm,
I've gotten in trouble in school from having a little bit of
right.
a little ADHD personality, bouncing
Yeah,
around. I like doing those things. And so with these AIs, I can basically offload all the things I don't like to do and focus in on the things that really, make me wake up and be passionate about,
yeah,
being creative,
mm,
figuring out the new thing, the new model drops, I get to benchmark things,
yeah,
and then something like this, and
yeah,
whereas, I used to, get a parking ticket and forget to pay it.
right.
It would just be
Yeah,
sitting in my brain and be like, oh, I need to do that. And I'd be like, I'll do it tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
so.
No, I agree. Okay, yeah, perfect. All right, let's move into the quick fire round. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions if you're okay with it. They're quick questions, but your answers can be as detailed as you want them to be. What is one AI tool that you use every week that you'd miss if it disappeared immediately?
But Wisprflow, we already talked about. I mean, that is
Yeah.
pinky to the function key, it makes my life so much better. Apple
Yeah.
will probably end up buying them one day because it is so much better than Siri. But
Oh, yeah.
until that day happens, please don't screw it up, Apple. But I love Wisprflow. On
Yeah.
top of that, Claude Code is it's just changed my life. And not just because I won the hackathon. It just
Mm,
the day I started playing with it, it just felt like I something understood me in this world. And it was just like, all right, let's work together, bro. Like it is
yeah.
so cool and good. And so I love
Yeah.
Claude.
Perfect. What one task in your job, your day-to-day job, I guess, or whatever you spend your time doing today, do you think will be fully automated within, I like to say 2 years, but let's say less, even probably 6 to 12 months at the pace of change?
Yeah, I know I'm supposed to answer the question, but I'm going to flip the question because
That's fine.
what task in my daily life should stay with me
Mm,
and not automated in a way is the way I think of it. And so I honestly believe in 2 years, 95% of the things I do will, for the most part, be automated. And that
mm,
that is the way I operate, where I create skills. I create cron jobs, which are basically just like alerts to tell my AI do something at this time of day,
mhm,
right?
yep,
So I constantly am trying to automate everything in a way. Now, so from like the legal perspective, right? As a lawyer, because I still
yep,
do take cases on from the PI side, and it's mostly referral work out there nowadays. But
mm,
I genuinely enjoy being able to help people. Someone gets in a car accident, they get hurt at work, something bad happens, they're in the hospital, they can't make it to work, they don't
yep,
know how they're going to pay their bills. If someone calls me,
mm,
I will almost always drop everything to
mm,
take that call and be able to help them for the next 20, 30 minutes and get them connected to the right people, right?
right,
Um, and with AI, it's actually made me even better at that because, like, so my company OnBreeze is just
mm,
a note taker, right? It fills out the forms that are necessary to go to different legal firms, and then through that, then my AI then knows, basically sees the notes, and it just tells me who I should send it to. So, anyways, it's
mm,
made me a better lawyer in that sense because I could do what I'm actually good at,
yeah,
in my opinion, which is being able to be empathetic to people and help them and get them to where they need to go. So I will, no matter how good the voice. I know you love the voice agents. No
yeah,
matter
yeah,
how good the voice agents get, I'm still going to answer that phone call because that's the one part I
yeah.
like about being a lawyer. So
Yeah, and I love voice agents, but I think there is definitely a differentiator for human empathy and for listening and for understanding and that connection, right? And there's a deeper philosophical argument of why people talk to AI so much, talk or type, because they feel heard, they feel seen, they feel understood, as you were saying, about Claude, that it gets you. And I think, it certainly helps, especially when you're going through something that's stressful or a life-changing moment. So completely understand that. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you see teams, could be legal teams, could be businesses, making with AI at the moment?
yeah, lock in, right? And I mean that as in everyone. I do consult for a fair amount of
Mm,
different companies now.
mm,
Everyone's trying to ask what is the best, what should they go get, and to me, it's like,
yeah.
look, what is best today will be not be the answer next week. It is moving
Mm,
so fast if you're paying attention to this. So you need to be trying everything, and you need to basically kind of whatever way you're getting your SaaS set up and stuff like that. You need to be open for everything and be constantly experimenting. I would
yeah.
also say when it comes to token budgets, everyone wants that budget number. Tell people to spend as much as possible on tokens
Yeah.
because it is such an unlock and you will see productivity go up. And at some point, yes, you will create a ceiling. You'll figure out where's a reasonable amount.
Right.
And you don't want to create one of these environments you're hearing about in Meta where people are writing Python scripts to burn tokens so
Yeah.
then they could get raises. When I'm talking to law firms, like you guys aren't even close to that point yet. We need to
Right.
get people using this and you're going to see quick productivity gains.
Mm,
So yeah, just kind of, try everything, be open for everything. Like just understand it's gonna 10x what you guys are doing every day.
yeah.
So, but you need to go through that learning period. So just get going with it.
Perfect. And I guess related to that, what skill do you think legal professionals specifically should focus on building to stay relevant in the future?
Yeah. So like I said, with law school, right? As a
Mm,
lawyer, you are going to be naturally good at prompting, in my opinion. You spent 3 years of your life and spent a lot of money learning IRAC. And there is no place in the world where that's actually useful until the last year, where all of a sudden
right.
agents actually respond really well to
Right.
issue rule analysis conclusion when you give it the prompt. So you're going to be naturally good at that. What I would start paying attention to is context management. The quick breakdown of that, I would look up this thing called Ripper 5, RIPER and then dash five. The five doesn't matter. It's research, innovate, plan, execute, and then review. Those five steps, if you can just put an agent through a loop like that, using that prompt engineering of it, IRAC, you can kind of figure out that whole loop of things. You're going to be at the top 95% of people out there prompting and working with AI agents every given day.
Awesome. And then last question, if you were starting from scratch today, where do you start?
Yeah. You just got to be curious, right? You just got to go do things. To me, it's find something that you are passionate about, but there's low stakes. For me, that was fantasy
Mm,
football. And
nice.
just go figure out a way to try to get you better. Use AI to get better
Mm,
at it. You brought it up earlier. If you immediately are like, oh yeah, I got this case coming up and we need to do a bunch of research, and you go have the AI do it, to be honest, you're lacking the skills to have the AI do well on that. And so
mm,
you need to find a way to work through something that's fun for you. Um, and
yeah.
that will get you through kind of like the tougher parts of understanding context engineering. And then you go into the deeper parts. All of a sudden, you're working with MCPs and connecting different
Mm,
APIs. And then you figure out skills.md, capital
yeah.
S.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you're automating things. And you're going to get really good at this if you
Yeah.
start with something fun.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, Mike, thanks so much for coming on. I'll include all the resources in the show notes. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to find you, where can they go?
Yeah, so lately I've been all over LinkedIn. That's actually been fun. Since I won the hackathon, I've met some of the coolest people. Like, and it's just for a year, it was kind of a lonely year of just being this lawyer who was just obsessed with AI. Turns out there's a lot of us out here, just like you have. So it's just been a blast. So find me on LinkedIn. I'm Michael T. Brown. Ab will link to me, I imagine.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the conversation. So much fun, and looking forward to seeing what you continue to build.
Absolutely, Ab. Thanks so much for having me.